We're going to spend some time learning some basic information about the plant world around us and their connection with us animals. Teachers often ask, what does a plant need to live? Younger students would probably say water, soil, and sunlight. Older students might say water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight because they know plants breathe in our waste carbon dioxide. A better question might be, how are plants made out of carbon dioxide? From small plants like this wood violet to big trees like this one, plants are made out of long chains of carbon compounds or carbohydrates. We know that already when we think about how when we eat products from plants for energy, we often say they're high in carbs or carbohydrates. Like apples or corn have sweet carbs like fructose, and pasta or bread from wheat have more complex carbs. They are foods made from carbon chains by plants during photosynthesis. So how do plants make these long chains of carbons or carbohydrates? We know they need water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight. The water comes up from the roots. Where does the carbon dioxide come from? Not the soil or the ground, from the air. Remember, we breathe it out. Animals like us breathe in oxygen and out carbon dioxide. We breathe in or exchange gases from our animal structures like lungs and mouths. Plants have openings for these gas exchanges too, called stomata on the leaves. Inside the leaf cells are structures called chloroplasts. This is where photosynthesis takes place, the powerhouses of plant cells, because it's where these energy-producing chemical reactions are taking place. Chloroplasts take in the water that is coming up from the roots and carbon dioxide in through those openings or stomata. The energy from the sunlight zaps the two molecules, the molecule of water from the roots and the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere are zapped together by the sun into carbon rings. Some rings are bonded into long chains, complex carbohydrates, and some are yummy, like the wheat. Some are not so yummy, like the cellulose of this tree bark. Simple rings make the simple sweet carbohydrates, like fructose in that apple mentioned earlier. The water and CO2 are bonded together by the sun's energy to make glucose or carbohydrates, and their waste gas, which are molecules of oxygen. That's what us animals breathe in, right? These two complementary processes in plants and animals are called photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Animals breathe in oxygen and eat carbohydrates. These two act together to provide us with energy for cell work. We take in oxygen and plant carbs, and we break the bonds in the carbohydrates that the plants built during photosynthesis. When we break those bonds, we get a burst of energy. That energy is then used in our cells to build bonds. Plants use sunlight energy to build carbohydrates and grow bark and plant structures like leaves and fruit. And we eat that as our source of energy in our cells. So our cells take in oxygen and carbohydrates and get energy and produce water and carbon dioxide. Is cellular respiration. It happens in the cells and it takes in oxygen and produces carbon dioxide. This exchange is respiration, so cellular respiration. One of the cool things about studying plants and animals is how they complement each other in these two processes. Another cool thing about studying both plants and animals is how they both have vascular systems to move materials around. Ours is our circulatory system. Plants have a system of xylem and phloem. It's important to note that not all plants have vascular systems. Some plants, like mosses, are small enough that they don't need these structures, but it does limit how big they can get, like this moss here. The vascular systems of plants, like the wood violet or these trees, have to move materials like water from their roots way up to the leaves where the chloroplasts are working on photosynthesis and creating those carbon compounds or carbohydrates that will be needed out in the leaves or out in the reproductive parts like the blossoms or growing fruit or down to the trunk so that the roots can grow. The phloem is the transport system for food, glucose, carbons, those things made in photosynthesis. The phloem moves those nutrients out to the systems of the tree. The phloem is near the outside of the structures. We can even tap into these structures and catch that sugar or glucose liquid, like you have seen people tap maple trees and get that sugary sap out of it. Then they can cook off or evaporate the water and concentrate that sap, or that's down to its sweet, sugary richness of maple syrup. Rubber trees in South America are also tapped to collect their sap, rubber, which South Americans have been using for hundreds of years. Because the phloem or food structure is closer to the bark of the tree, it's why people are told not to peel the bark layer off of birch trees, because it can damage the tree by cutting into that phloem food system. But also, unwanted trees can be intentionally killed by girdling them. That's intentionally cutting into the phloem all the way around the tree, essentially cutting off the food supply to this tree system. When the tree's stored food runs out, the tree will die. There's a forestry management plan. For example, you may see whole stands of aspen girdled to slow the expansion of these trees into prairies and other unwanted areas. The xylem transports water from the roots all the way up to those leaves. Remember the leaves with the chloroplasts and photosynthesis? Each year, new xylem are made. In good years, there's a lot of xylem made, and the tree rings would be thick. And in dry years, not as many xylem are made, and the tree rings would be thin. Next time you're outside, surrounded by plants, I hope you'll think about photosynthesis and the vascular system of plants and how they're such a great complement to us, not to mention how much carbon dioxide they store from our atmosphere.